On today's Plain English, ESG and a friendlier kind of investing. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and you are listening to Plain English, the best way to upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. By listening here every week, you'll get exposure to lots of new concepts in English, lots of expressions, new vocabulary words, things like that, and hopefully you'll have fun in the process. This is lesson number 509, which you can find at plainenglish.com/509. Coming up today, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's a way of directing your stock investments toward companies that generally act responsibly toward the environment and society as a whole. In the second half of the lesson, you'll learn how to use the English expression nagging doubt. And JR has a song of the week. Let's get going. Imagine you have saved some money for the future, and instead of putting it in a savings account, you decide to invest it in the stock market, buying a few diversified index funds of global stocks. An index fund is convenient. You buy as much or as little as you want. The fund invests a little bit in hundreds or thousands of companies, so you get nice broad exposure to the market without having to do much legwork. And imagine that over the years, you check the value of your portfolio of index funds. While it's had its ups and downs, the portfolio is making you a nice return, far better than what you could get in a bank. You feel good about your decision, but you have a few nagging doubts. One of your index funds includes a lot of ExxonMobil stock, and you don't believe that ExxonMobil is doing enough to avoid the damaging effects of climate change, at least not like some energy companies in Europe are doing. And you also notice that at least for a while, the index funds included stock in Wirecard, a German company that blew up after an accounting scandal, something that could have been prevented if they had better controls, not to mention stronger ethics. And you see, too, that your index funds also include the gun maker Smith & Wesson. You remember hearing the company opposed gun laws in the United States after a mass shooting at a school. So you look again at your portfolio value and you're happy with the number, but maybe you're not so happy about how you got there. Isn't there a way to make a good return without investing in companies that do things you don't believe in? Enter ESG investing. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. The idea is that investors, including mutual funds and index funds, can choose to invest in companies that act responsibly with respect to the environment and society at large, and which have good management controls. The idea is, not all companies, and not all profitable companies, are equal in their impact on the wider world. In the past, maybe it was enough for investors to care about dividends and future profits, but in a more enlightened version of capitalism, investors should choose to steer their funds toward companies that do a broader range of good. And this idea has caught on in about the last 5 years. What, though, do ESG investors care about? Let's take E, S, and G in turn. Environmental concerns look like this. What are the company's greenhouse gas emissions? How much energy does it use? How much waste does it produce? How much water does it use in its processes? These questions are about a company's impact on E, the environment. Now let's turn to the S in ESG. Does a company pay women and men equal amounts for the same work? Does top management include racial and ethnic minorities? Are women represented at the top? What is the company's safety record? And finally, G stands for governance. Does a company have processes and systems in place to protect it? Have there been data breaches? How well does a company guard sensitive customer information? Does the company practice good ethics? Most individual investors don't have the time or ability to ask these questions directly of companies, so special ESG analysts do the work for them. Using publicly available data and interviews with management, ESG analysts produce scorecards that evaluate companies on a range of ESG metrics. That way, individual investors can read those reports and decide where to direct their investments. But even that, realistically, is more work than individual investors can do. So mutual fund companies and index fund sponsors have introduced ESG funds. Instead of including all companies in a given industry or index, these ESG funds only include those companies that meet certain ESG criteria. That way, buyers of the ESG index funds can rest assured that their investments won't go to companies that don't act responsibly. Not only that, but sponsors of these funds promise that ESG funds will make the same return, or even a better return, because high-scoring ESG companies are stronger companies in the long run. So individual investors can buy an ESG fund, only invest in responsible companies, not have to do much work, and still make a better return than a traditional index fund approach. It is a tantalizing prospect, but the whole idea is built on a weak foundation. Next week, we'll talk about why 2022 will be remembered as the year in which the cracks in the ESG foundation began to show. If you watched the 500th lesson video, you might have remembered a couple of your fellow listeners said their favorite part of Plain English Plus is the live calls. And so I thought I'd take just a moment to share what our live calls are typically like. We do them on Zoom, and they start at all different times so that everyone can join during waking hours. They're about an hour each, and we have a nice discussion about a recent plain English topic. One of our favorite call topics was about Google Maps. So you remember we talked about all the features in Google Maps in lesson 477. Well, after that, we had a live call where the individual members gave us a Google Maps tour of their hometowns. So we have multiple topics each month. They're on Zoom, and the links are sent out in advance to all Plus members. If that sounds like something you can use in your English studies, then come check out the Plus membership at plainenglish.com/plus, plainenglish.com/PLUS. Today's English expression is a nagging doubt. Before I start, I want to mention that a lot of people use the word doubt incorrectly in English. And this is especially true if your first language is Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian. That's because there is a false cognate. A duda, in Spanish at least, can mean a doubt, yes, but it can also simply mean an uncertainty or a question. In English, a doubt is a feeling that something is wrong. We use doubt to mean a lack of confidence, or you don't believe something is true, or you think something might not be right. For example, imagine you're not sure how index funds work. Imagine you say, I have some doubts about how index funds work. And then you ask a question. Well, that is incorrect. You have a question about how index funds work, not a doubt. But imagine you think something is wrong with the investment. You think maybe something bad is going to happen and you don't have confidence in it anymore. You can say, I have some doubts about this investment, and that would be correct. A nagging doubt is a doubt that's persistent, but not very strong. You can say you have a nagging doubt if you frequently feel like something might go wrong, but for whatever reason, you don't act on it, and the doubt keeps coming back. You can have a nagging doubt around your house. Imagine it rains, hard, but not too much. And imagine you get a little water in your basement. After that, you might have some nagging doubts about the waterproofing in your basement. What will happen when a really big storm comes? You have some doubts. You think something is wrong. You don't have confidence in that basement. And it's a nagging doubt if you think about it and then dismiss the thought. You just decide it's not a priority right now, and you don't do anything. And then some storm clouds form overhead, and guess what? That doubt is back. Ah, no, it's not going to rain too hard, you tell yourself. And the next week, you're laying in bed thinking about that basement again. This is a nagging doubt. It's a small feeling of uncertainty or a small feeling that something is wrong. You dismiss the thought, but it's persistent. It keeps coming back. It's a nagging doubt. Parents of teenagers might have nagging doubts. Did you smell cigarette smoke on a jacket that one time? No, it couldn't be. Wait, could it? I mean, it could be a friend that smokes, yeah, nothing to worry about. But if his friends smoke, that's not good either, is it? You dismiss the thought from your head. You don't think about it. But then, later, you see a plastic wrapper, like what comes on top of a pack of cigarettes. Okay, plastic like that comes on everything. I'm sure it's nothing, right? This is a nagging doubt. It's not an emergency. It's just a small little voice in your head saying something might be wrong. You silence the voice once and again, but the voice comes back. This is a nagging doubt. I used the term today in our discussion about investing in index funds. I asked you to imagine a scenario in which an individual investor makes a nice return on index funds. But those index funds include a lot of stocks, and nobody is really thinking about whether the companies are doing good or not. The selection of stocks is automatic. And this investor had a nagging doubt. Yes, the returns were good, but the funds included investments in companies that, let's just say, were not doing the most good in the world. Companies that might have been polluting the environment more than necessary. Companies that might have been careless with customer data, that might have lobbied the government for some unsavory things. And that investor, I asked you to imagine, that investor had some nagging doubts. Yes, the hypothetical investor liked the returns, but the doubt was about how those returns were generated. Was it wrong to make returns from investments in companies that weren't acting responsibly? In this situation, the nagging doubt was never an emergency. It was never the highest priority in our imaginary investor's day. But the doubt never really went away either. And it's for just that type of investor that ESG funds were designed. These funds can help silence that nagging doubt about whether index fund investments inadvertently funnel money to companies acting badly. But now, some ESG investors have some nagging doubts of their own. Does ESG investing even work? And can anyone even agree on what all of the parts mean? And remember those people who said that ESG funds can make even more money than traditional investments? Well, I have some nagging doubts about that, and that is the topic for next week's lesson. It's Thursday, so JR has selected a song of the week. Here's the song he picked for today, Dancing in the Moonlight by Top Loader. This is a remake of a really famous song of the same name from the early 1970s. The writer, Sherman Kelly, wrote the song after he was attacked by gang members, and he envisioned an alternate world of peace and celebration of life. And so the lyrics, despite coming from a negative event, are incredibly positive. And this is a good version too, by Top Loader. Dancing in the Moonlight is the song of the week. Thanks, JR. And that's all for today's Plain English. Congratulations on reaching the end of yet another one. As one member said in that 500th lesson video, there are so many, and no matter how many you listen to, you're doing great. You're making great progress together with a fantastic community around the world. We'll be back on Monday with number 510. See you then.